Do you remember the PS2 game Kya Dark Lineage? The platformer action-adventure game with the snowboarding and creatures that look like they should be in Dark Crystal? Well, don't worry if you don't, because I never heard of this game until recently. And even if you do know this game, stick around because I believe this game is a gem lost to time. So let's dive into the world of Kya.
Kya Dark Lineage is a game for the PlayStation 2 developed by Eden Games.
Eden Games is a French game development studio who began development on Kya around the year 2000 and actually evolved from 3 different ideas. A Mario Kart-like game called Riders that involved riding magical creatures, a Halloween-themed game called Caraboss,
and then Bewitched before turning into Kya Dark Lineage in 2003.
There's a teaser from 2002, and I think this game going through 3 different iterations really had the character design for Kya not fully locked in. And the teaser hypes up the reveal of Kya but just doesn't show her. If you want to know more about the development, there's a mini documentary about the making of the game. I'll link in the description. The game was published by another French company, the one and only Atari, and was released throughout many different regions following its initial release in North America. It reviewed overall quite well, but let's see how I found the game. I walked into this game completely blind and was already intrigued by just the menu screen. Before pressing start, we were shown a bright green forest, contrasted with a dark pond with scary looking creatures swimming and flying by, before being met with our main character Kya. I was already loving the graphics and style of the game, reminding me of my all-time favorite, Rayman 3. After starting a new game, we get an eerie cutscene showing Kya being awoken by something supernatural. She equips herself with a boomerang. Not my first weapon of choice, but whatever. She goes downstairs where a hole in the wall is exposing a once sealed off room in her house. Her half-brother Frank discovered it and assumes the room was used by Kya's father. Frank, just like any smart person in a horror movie, just starts messing around with ancient artifacts and ends up summoning a portal to another world. They both get sucked in and this bong-looking light source fades to black. Kya is then awoken in the new world by some strange-looking creatures, who I thought looked like something out of a Jim Henson movie like Dark Crystal. Kya, being confused, passes out again, but is slapped awake from one of these creatures because there's something dangerous coming their way, and it's time to start running. You then take control of Kya, where you run and jump over obstacles while being attacked by a group of wolf-looking creatures from behind. You dodge net traps and kick these little pig guys into them, before also dodging wind tunnels, and also a barrage of bombs coming from these wolves. You then jump into a natural water slide where you slide down while dodging obstacles. We then slide right into a wolfen base, which we find out from our homie guide here. We then use the environment to sneak past the wolfen before eventually getting seen and falling and gliding through the air. You use the air currents and cannons to send you in different directions, where you can dive around to dodge the environment before finally reaching our destination. But there's a wolfen in the way of getting to our homie's village, so we use ourselves as bait to put the wolfen in a trap before heading into the village. So already, I'm loving the game. The graphics and environment are super stylish, showing off a beautiful but also dangerous nature. It controls pretty decently too. They aren't the smoothest controls, but I was having no trouble platforming around so far. We now get a cutscene of Kya heading into the village, and the not so lucky Frank, who is dropped into the wolfen territory and is captured. Kya is then shown Native City, a secret hideaway from the wolfen inhabited by the native, which is what these creatures are called. The city is pretty small since the native population is kidnapped and turned into wolfen. Kya then speaks with the village's leader, Atea, who reveals that Kya's father, Alan, was sent to this world the same way, but is now the evil leader of the wolfen, and now goes by Brazul, which is who Frank ended up being captured by. Kya, now determined to stop her dad and save her brother, goes to learn how to fight by one of the village's residents, Akasa. We go to the training ground where our homie from before, Atan, is talking to Akasa. Atan gets a little jealous that we are getting trained since he's the strongest one in the village, and Akasa gives us a bracelet that gives us the ability to fight the wolfen. The game changes perspective while in combat to focus on our opponent, and we then learn some combos on a dummy, which took me a few minutes to get down. Then, the wolfen being held prisoner wakes up, and we use our new skills to kick its ass. The natives think that Kya is worthy of the awakening power which she is granted. They use these magical orbs to exorcise the wolfen back into natives. Before heading off on our journey, we are tasked with buying a weapon. On the way to the store, we run into a native ripping on a snowboard looking thing, and tells you to buy one and come back later to race him. Looking back at this gameplay footage reminded me of this dude because I totally forgot to come back. There are a bunch of mini games around the village that I neglected too since I was just locked in on finishing the main story. Anyways, I made my way over to the store and used the coins I collected along the way to buy a boomerang called Boomy. This can be used to take down smaller enemies as well as activate switches around the map. Atea then tasks us with finding an egg that's going to help us find our brother Frank, and we start our journey. I noticed it a few times before, but it happens a lot when transitioning between levels is the camera angle. angles. I think some of the angles with the scenery of the game and Kya position between them looks very cinematic, and I really liked it. We walk into our first area, which shows us that we can hang off ledges to get to new areas, and then we take down some wolfen. When exercising the wolfen, we increase the population in the native city, which opens up new shops and mini games for us to use. It's kind of cool because we have a reason to take down the enemies that gives us a reward. Sometimes the end result of a collectathon can be a little unrewarding. I found a map that shows off all the wolfen locations, but to use the map, it was the L1 button, which I found a little weird for the default for a map. When getting damaged, you use your magic orbs to heal you with these crystals, and a good way not to get damaged is to sneak around the wolfen. A lot of them are armed with machine guns that stun lock you, so there are easier ways to take them out if you move around them, which can be challenging at times. You can then use these turns to take down enemies and also big rocks blocking the way, or you can dispense a bomb from these machines which you can kick around. After being shown all these mechanics, I was finally at the egg, which ends up hatching a companion that can allow us to communicate with Atea, who guides us through levels. We then open up our first elevator, which we can use to travel between levels in the village. After getting back to the village, Atea tells us about a medallion we have to reassemble to open up a portal back to our world. After that, I went and bought myself an energy board so I can go shred some gnar, and that's what I did next. There's lots of points throughout the game where you gotta whip out the board to traverse the level or to outrun something. The first tutorial world we started in was called the Roots, and the second area with the egg is called the Flying Forest, and that's where I went to shred the gnar. This world ends off at a big stronghold of wolfen that requires a lot of stealth to get past. And to even get to that point, you have to unlock the climbing gloves that gives the ability to climb on these vines, as well as to hang off them. After I got through the stronghold, I was met with a big purple thing I couldn't get past, which is a rune, which is what we're after to get back home. I had to backtrack to get this item to be able to hold the rune. That involved chasing down a bird. But after all that, Kya throws the rune holder thing on her belt buckle, and it's time to grab the purple thing. After collecting the rune, we get 50 more magic orbs we can hold, which is nice because you need them to exercise the wolfen. And after fighting so many, it's a pain to backtrack to find more. But you could always top up at these creatures infinitely, which is nice. But after grabbing this rune, it triggers a boss fight. This big lava worm starts spitting lava at you, and to beat it, you gotta climb these platforms to aim at its weak points and then hit him with your boomy. We then take an elevator up to the next world, the Hunter's Domain. When getting to this new world, Atea is kidnapped by the wolfen, which is strange. I thought the wolfen didn't know where the village was, and also we only found out about the kidnapping through a text box. It felt a little lackluster and felt like not that big of a deal that he was kidnapped. I guess they didn't have the time or budget to get a cutscene right here. Anyways, the Hunter's Domain is a desert-like world that gives us our first time being able to ride jagmuts, which are creatures that can jump high and can deal a lot of damage to enemies. Kya's jump isn't so high, so these creatures not only jump high, but can be used as a booster for Kya to jump off. This level made me realize how easy it is to knock wolfen off ledges, which makes combat easier, but doesn't allow you to exercise them, which is needed to unlock more shops that are needed to progress the levels. This had me backtrack these levels to find wolfen I knocked off edges or to find ones I missed along the way. I ended up getting an upgraded boomy that allows you to aim it and hit targets in higher areas, and also got an upgrade to be able to wall jump. This ability is a little finicky at times, and I struggle to wall jump. After traversing the level for a while, we get a cutscene of Razul, who is excited by the news of Atea's kidnapping, but is also contacted by a native for a meeting. We then went back to Kya, where I discovered this fortress area that is getting hit by wind in all directions. And you have to scale the fortress while dodging the wind, and this part was super frustrating. Sometimes being knocked off would send you back to a checkpoint that was reasonable, but at other times you get knocked off and it would send you back so far. Needless to say, this one took me a while. After completing this area, I ended up in a new world, which had me mauled by these guard dogs that can one-shot you. But I realized I hadn't beat the boss of the previous world, so I went back and found the boss fight against the hunter who has Atea locked up. This fight has you kick back bombs at the hunter while dodging his electric bombs and his fire breath. After beating him, we rescue Atea and head back to the village. At the village, Aton tells us about the machine that turns natives into wolfens and how it uses a lot of amber, so we should go scope out the amber mines next to get a clue of where our brother Frank is held up, and Aton is going to guide us there. So I headed over to the quarry, which is the world I went to before too early. This world has a part near the start that is so cool. You hop on the back of an upgraded jagmut that can sprint, and you chase down this train and jump from the jagmut to the train, and it felt like I was in an action movie or something. This part was so much fun. I then got to a new area that required me to upgrade my energy board to use these speed boosts. These speed boosts lead you into a mine, and Aton is supposed to be our guide, but he hits one switch and then just kind of fucks off. Inside the mine had one of the most frustrating parts for me. You hop on this airship that is controlled by a green circle to go and a red X to stop, and you have to stop and go to navigate between fire being blown at you. When one of the airbag things gets hit, you can sometimes save it since it regenerates, but if both get hit, you crash straight to the ground. This part was super frustrating, especially since you get sent back to the beginning if you fail. It took me a while to get this part done, but after finally getting to the amber mine, we meet up with Atan, who ends up being the native who wanted to meet Brazil and betrays us. We then try to fight Brazil, who ends up releasing this gas, and Kaya goes sicko mode after regenerating her health from one of the crystals and sends the whole mine into chaos. Brazil makes his escape and Kaya heads back to the village, which is burnt to the ground, and all the natives are being taken away on an airship. We hop on a Jagmoot and then sprint after the ship. This has us jump on a turret and shoot cannons down on the airship, then board the ship and save the natives. This part wasn't as fun as the other chase scene, as I kept falling off the ledge before hopping on the ship, but I thought there was going to be more of a fight once I got on the ship, but I guess the natives were just unguarded on the ship. Anyways, after getting back to the village, which was completely rebuilt after the attack, Atea shows us a forgotten island that might hold the hideout of Brazil, but to get there, we need to be shot out of a cannon that's located at the airpost, and to get there, we need to buy another upgrade to Boomy that allows us to control it so we can hit targets in weird spots. Before I got this upgrade, I had to head back to convert some wolfins, which took me quite a while, but after arriving at the airpost, I got through it pretty quickly and arrived at this cannon to be shot into the Forgotten Island. This world is full of lava that moves up and down that forces you to platform really quickly, and then we end up fighting Brazil's lab, but Brazil makes an escape and turns Frank into a wolfin. Now it's time to fight Wolf and Frank. Frank throws some melee attacks, and after taking some damage will force you to take cover and dodge some long range attacks. After beating him, we can exercise Frank and turn him back to human and bring him back to the village. Now Atea tells us that we need to collect all the runes in order to beat Brazil, and this requires more backtracking and finding all the runes I missed along the way. One area that held a rune that I didn't realize I can go back to was the tutorial area called the Roots. After collecting all the runes, I was ready for the final area, but apparently I wasn't, because moments after arriving to the final area of Wolfen City, Kaya is kidnapped and stripped of all of our equipment. Brazil was hoping we would find all the runes before fighting him so he could just steal them, so we just walked straight into his trap. Brazil reveals he isn't from the human world and was banished from his old world, and Kaya is saddened by the fact that she isn't human, but Kaya isn't done yet. We break out of her cage, and with all of our equipment gone, we can't fight the wolfen, and the game challenges us to sneak past all of them to get our equipment back. After getting it back and escaping back to the village, we regroup with Atea and Frank, who give Kaya some motivation to go beat her otherworldly deadbeat dad. We then head over to Brazil's fortress and fight the biggest horde of wolfen. Sometimes it would get challenging when a few of them would get into the mix, but all of them here was kind of insane. After beating them all and getting into the fortress, we see Brazil giving Atan the task of fighting us and giving him a gun that turns natives and humans into wolfens. Also, we aren't given much depth into how Atan ended up flipping and turning to Brazil, but I guess he couldn't handle Kaya becoming the strong one in the village. Anyways, right when the fight started, I got hit by the gun and Kaya was turned into a wolfen. I almost thought this was supposed to happen, but I guess not. I ended up fighting Atan, who wasn't too hard after dodging his first attack. I thought I'd be able to turn him back to a native, but after a cutscene, his body just disappears and we gotta move quickly because lava is filling up the fortress. This part has one of the hardest energy boarding parts, and it took me a while to get past it. And with that, we are finally at the last boss fight against Brazil. You fight him like any other wolfen, and after taking some damage, he'll jump up in the air and shoot lightning, and will come down after dodging him a bit. You keep doing this and Brazil will throw in some more attacks while on the ground before being defeated. Brazil clings onto the edge and reaches out for help, but it's too late, and Kaya watches him as he burns in the lava. Kaya gets the runes he stole back and heads back to the village. The village cheers on Kaya, and Atea tries to convince her to stay in their world, but Frank is waiting to go back. At this point, you can do all the things you missed, like convert all the wolfen so you can unlock all the extra features in the main menu, or you can go and play the mini games, but I just went straight to the ending. Kaya and Frank use the medallion with all the runes on it to go back to their world, but if only it was that simple. They end up in some barren desert and are attacked by something unknown, and we get the end? I mean, it's over 20 years since this came out with no sequel, so I assume this is the end for Kaya. But this isn't the end of the video, cause now I gotta tell you what I thought about the game fully. I never saw any ads for this game as a kid, and it wasn't until recently I was browsing PS2 games and just saw the box art and just intrigued me, and I'm so glad that I played it. I really enjoyed the art style and graphics for this game. It's a mix of Y2K and fantasy that blends together for some really cool cinematic shots. I think the controls were pretty solid, which kept the platforming and exploration fun. There were a few things like the wall jump that misbehaved sometimes, as well as a few glitches and jankiness that made for some frustrating moments, but it kept to a minimum. The combat was really fun, and the switch up of perspective was really cool. There were lots of interesting items to unlock throughout the game, and the addition of new enemies and obstacles to each world kept it pretty fresh. I feel like its biggest downside comes from the amount of backtracking if you don't exercise all the wolfen. If you know what you're doing and really explore everything, it won't be too much of a problem, but I guess everyone plays this game differently. This game I feel was a little longer compared to some of the older generation games I play on this channel. I spent spent 15 hours playing it total, and I don't really feel like they needed to cut anything. I actually felt like there was a lot of things they had to cut, like some cutscenes, because they didn't have the time. This game really reminded me of Rayman 3, having good combat and platforming blended into unique and stylized worlds. I highly suggest you play this game if you haven't, and if you have played this game, maybe it's time to go back and replay it. I also highly suggest you subscribe to my channel. Peace.